Greetings and welcome. It is Sunday here at the Soule of Wisdom. We usually have our Sunday discussion on a Sunday, which seems appropriate.
Yeah.
We pick one topic, we run with it. It's fun. We get to dial down the studio lights so I'm not dying under the intense heat, and I also run blind as I take off my glasses. So reading is always fun, and I can't guarantee the accuracy. With me, as always, Producer-Wife Beth. Greetings.
Hi.
So you can find us at soulwisdom.com. That is soul spelled S-O-U-L-E. You can email us questions at soulwisdom.com. You can tweet us at soulwisdom. You can visit soulwisdom.com/learn and find out all about our new Teachable course, where we teach you how to run an Etsy shop, but to actually make money doing it, which is kind of the point.
Yeah.
So give that a look if you have any interest at all in running an Etsy shop, or if you already have one and it's not quite clicking for you. Give it a look. We'll help you out. So on Sundays, we usually like to just jump right in. We save most of the tomfoolery for the weekdays.
And there's plenty of it.
There is plenty of it. And I suppose you could say that today's topic is a little bit tomfoolery-ish, but not from us.
No.
So, Madam Producer Wife, you've known me for, what did we decide it was, 218 years?
Long time.
The number keeps changing. We've lost track. Anyways, in all the time you've known me, I have always said that the purpose of a business is what?
To make money. To take people's money.
Yes, it is to make money. It's to take the other person's money. That's what it comes down to. That's the brass tacks of it. Now, obviously, there's an exchange of goods that has to happen to get that done. The person who is giving you their money has to feel there's a value to do so. They have to have confidence in you, things like that.
Yep.
But ultimately, the business exists to take the money of the consumer. And if they're not taking the money of the consumer, they will not exist.
Yep.
There's no point otherwise. That is capitalism, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, we have seen time and again, especially from larger corporations, that they seem to be and I want to delve into what one large corporation is doing that, in our opinion, doesn't fit. Doesn't have a place, and maybe use it as a broader discussion about what no business should probably be digging into. And if you have a small business, maybe you'll take this as a warning not to dig into it on your own. Fair?
Fair.
Okay.
Let's go.
So let's just dig right in. I'm going to pull up Mr. Browser, and today we're only going to use Mr. Browser for the main story. After that, I'll provide links. And I'll read, because I think people need more FaceTime with me today.
Okay.
That's on the visually gifted side, of course. If you are a podcast listener, well, then you don't care. But that's okay. All right, so this article comes to us from Fox Business. Walmart stands by CRT training as thought-provoking and instructive. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to dig into Walmart, and we're going to dig into their critical race theory training. So I'm just going to start by reading this article so we can have some background, okay? And it says, Walmart has stood by a diversity training that claims white people have internal racist conditioning, that Americans today are inherently a racist legacy, and that ideas such as perfectionism, worship of the written word, individualism, and objectivity are aspects of white supremacy culture that promote white supremacy thinking. A civil rights veteran and a shareholder responded to the training with alarm, condemning it as racist propaganda and an insult comparable to the worst blackface act. Yet Walmart stood by the training in a statement to Fox Business. The statement reads, Walmart began offering Racial Equity Institute training sessions in 2018 for corporate leaders to share analysis and encourage reflection on the history of race in America, as well as systematic racial inequity in its institutional and structural forms. That is a mouthful. Melissa Hill, a Walmart spokesman, told Fox Business, while the company does not agree with all the views that were presented, we have found these sessions to be thought-provoking and constructive. Remind me if we have time to circle back on the we don't necessarily agree with all
Yeah.
part of that. If we have time. And if we remember, we may go off on a whole different tangent. Hill referenced Christopher Rufo, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, who published the training materials and wrote about them in the City Journal. Contrary to the assertions in the City Journal article, the program was designed for corporate officers and salaried managers, not frontline hourly associates, she told Fox Business. She acknowledged that Rufo's materials are an accurate representation of the trainings, but she also claimed that the article misrepresented their overall tone. We'll talk about the tone in a minute, too. While the City Journal quotes excerpts from individual pages of the curriculum, the selection of language doesn't reflect the overall tone of the conversations, Hill insisted. She said training was developed in a way that aligns with our core value of respect for the individual. The training materials published claim that citizens of the United States take part in a legacy of racial inequity. If you are a citizen of the United States, part of the legacy you have inherited is the historical, systemic, pervasive way in which the white race and the benefits, privilege, and power for those who came to be known as white have been constructed in this country, the materials claim. That was all quoted, by the way. I believe it is lifted directly from the materials. The materials claim that in order for oppression to succeed, we must collude or cooperate. White people cooperate by following their internal racist conditioning, which leads them to say, I am not racist, I'm a good white person. One passage lists characteristics of white supremacy culture, including perfectionism, worship of the written word, individualism, and objectivity. Remind me, we may circle back to that too.
There's a lot to remind you of, but I'll try.
Well, you're supposed to be taking notes. Isn't that the producer job?
I'm not taking notes. It's just in my head. Nice.
Okay. This is the quality programming we give you here at the Soule of Wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Didn't I say that we were a semi-professional podcast?
Yes.
The other day? Okay.
Yeah.
We're just living up to that commitment.
Yeah.
Among the problems with objectivity, the document lists the idea that there is such a thing as being objective or neutral and requiring people to think in a linear logical fashion. Civil rights veteran Bob Woodson, who is a black man, by the way, founder and president of the Woodson Center, condemned the training in an interview with Fox Business. It is the most insulting proposition that I've ever heard, Woodson said of the suggestion that objectivity is an aspect of white supremacy culture. He noted that in vaudeville shows, whites used to caricature blacks by putting on blackface and acting as if they are dim-witted, slow, irresponsible, all the things that the progressives today say are the opposite of acting white. He said the training encouraged insulting stereotypes of what it means to be black. Woodson also mused about what Walmart stores would look like if they actually implemented the policy avoiding white supremacy culture. If a customer asked for a cart, the employee would say, if you had been here earlier, you would have gotten one. But it's white to be efficient, and the carts are back in, he said. And because it's white to be efficient and bring the carts back in, he said, since being punctual is also white, half the employees would show up late, and there'd be long lines at the checkout. There already is. So maybe they've already done this. I don't know.
They're working on it.
Yes. What would happen to sales receipts if prices were not accurately marked? Woodson asked, noting that correct prices are a function of perfectionism. I don't know how a black person could hold their head up and sit through someone saying this about them, he added. It's the height of insulting, and if people do not express outrage at this insulting, demeaning, patronizing approach of Walmart, then there's something sick about them. Justin Danhoff, a Walmart shareholder through the National Center for Public Policy Research, also condemned the training. As a Walmart shareholder, I really want to know how much money the company is spending to indoctrinate its employees with racist propaganda. I also want to know if Walmart staffers were given the opportunity to object to this madness without fear of reprisal. Telling company managers in a mandatory training that they are guilty of white supremacy thinking is beyond insane, Danhoff added. But that's the exact state of play with corporate America as more and more companies adopt racist and Marxist training programs. End article. Okie dokie. So, I would say, and it's not necessarily a surprise since that was a Fox Business article, and Fox, except when they choose not to be, tend to lean fairly right. I would call that a fairly damning article on the whole idea of CRT at Walmart.
Yes.
I don't necessarily disagree with said article, however. Now, I'm hoping people have figured out at this point that we try to just call balls and strikes as we see them. And I will call out the right equally as I will call out the left. I will call out a white man as equally as I will call out a black man, a woman, a man. I don't care. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I call balls and strikes. Now, you can disagree with my assessment, and that's cool. That's kind of the whole idea. Let's have a discussion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why am I doing this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we putting ourselves through this? The idea is to talk. But I'm really, really confused as to what any of this has to do with taking the customer's money. Do you have any enlightening thoughts on that helps this make sense for me, Producer Wife?
Well, when we were talking about this article earlier, the only thing that I could come up with is if Walmart as a corporation feels that their employees are acting in a racist fashion. But I would argue that by the time you're hiring somebody to work in Walmart, if they do have racist values or opinions, it's going to be very hard for Walmart to change that, especially by the time they're a grown adult. Those usually aren't things that just change from one corporate session. But that would imply to me that they're hiring the wrong damn people.
Yeah, I would agree. And if you discover after hiring that somebody is acting in a racist fashion, don't you just do the old-fashioned thing and fire them?
Yeah.
So I'm a little confused as to why we don't just make this simple.
And if this is for the higher-ups, does that mean that there's issues among the upper management that they're acting in a racist fashion?
Then shouldn't they just be fired?
Right?
I don't know. I don't get why it is. And Walmart's not the only one here. We're going to pick on them today because there was a nice article that made this easy. And there's training materials that I'm going to read from in a minute. So there's like material that helps us, but they're not the only ones.
No.
This is like pervasive all of a sudden. I wonder.
I read that American Express is implementing similar things.
Oh yeah. No, it's
That was
I've
the
said
most recent one I saw.
I've said it before. I'm so glad that we work for ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be in a corporate environment, and especially in the positions I was in positions of leadership. Because if somebody presented me with some of these ideas and said, go lead based on these ideas, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
At some point your own values have to kick in, I guess. Now, but what I was going to say is I'm trying to figure out exactly when it was, and why it was that we decided that corporate America should suddenly be the arbiters of truth when it comes to cultural issues.
And when did it become okay for your employer to be mean or rude to you? Because I've had management positions as well, and I've always tried really hard to realize that the person working for you isn't just a person working for you. They are also a person, and they have a unique set of abilities and gifts and challenges just like any other human. And when you start singling out, even if you think it's for good reason, but if you start singling out, in this case, white people, and telling them that even though they think they're not racist, they really are, and they're really bad people. And even if that's the small majority of your workforce, if you're going in and approaching people with a mindset of, oh, these are bad employees because they have this inherited bias, then you're stripping away part of that person. and you're no longer treating them as an individual. You're treating them as a group, a bad group.
Yeah. No,
you should be nice to your employees.
Well, you would think that. And, they're arguing, I guess, with this training that they're just trying to make sure that everybody in the store is comfortable. That
I don't see how that would make anyone comfortable.
Well, no, it puts everybody on eggshells because you're telling one group of people that they're bad, that they inherited it, that it's just what they are, and they need to go fix it. Well, isn't that just the reverse of what we were doing up until like the civil rights movement of the 60s?
Yeah.
I don't know. We circle back and we do stupid things. But again, who exactly was it that made Walmart the arbiter of truth and everything when it comes to this?
Yeah.
And
again, how does it help them get sales?
It doesn't. See, here's the other thing with business. Business exists to take the customer's money. The employee goes to a business to get their money. That was always my approach personally when I was out in the workforce. I'm there to get my money. I took pride in my work and everything else because I knew that's how I would get more money. But ultimately, if I wasn't getting enough money or I wasn't getting paid at all or whatever, if I couldn't make my money there, I wasn't going to stay.
Yeah.
I also... there was a time when I was younger where I'd put up with some corporate BS and stuff like that. I wouldn't do it now. But you're making a place uncomfortable for people. You're just choosing which ones to make it uncomfortable for. Where I feel like you could make it comfortable for all if you just simply handled things on an exception basis. Now, and here's the truth as I see it. My truth. That's a fun one. Everybody says that now. My truth. Well, here's mine. Okay? And for the record, I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. I was one of very, very few white people. Okay? I know a lot about racial tensions because of that. But I will also tell you that it is not as pervasive as everybody would have you believe, nor is it as one way as everybody would have you believe. Okay? For a lot of people in the neighborhood, a lot of other kids in the neighborhood, we treated each other respectfully. But I can also tell you there was a few of them, especially as we got older, who all of a sudden where they, were cool with me, it was like it flipped on a dime one day, and usually it was right about when they hit the age of puberty. And all of a sudden they're hurling slurs at me. So it can work in both directions. It's not, it's not a one-way street. But I will say again, though, that it's incredibly, incredibly rare. It's not as pervasive as the world would make it out to be. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Yes, it exists. But it's not the rule, which means you manage it on an exception basis. Tell everybody, treat each other well. That is the rule of this workplace. If you don't, we'll fire you.
Yeah.
And then when you see somebody not treating somebody well on either side of that equation, they're gone.
Yeah.
This is not difficult. But we're going to make it difficult because, why not? So along those lines, that Rufo dude who got a hold of the Walmart training materials, which I will remind you that Walmart said were accurate.
Yes.
So they acknowledge that what I've got a hold of here, thanks to him, is the real deal. And I might even link some of this stuff in the description so you can take a look yourself. I'm not going to pull it up on screen right now. I'm just going to read from it. But there's some interesting things. First of all, so much of the material, if you read through it, And the reason why I'm not going to pull it up on screen is it is 53 pages heavy. This is a big thing.
I'm sure everybody was excited to go to that training. Just saying.
You think? Yeah.
Hope they got donuts.
Are those racist?
And some really strong coffee to stay awake.
Yeah, I don't know. Something tells me that stuff's not okay either. But before we get into this, because so much of this material is actually historically based, okay? Here's one of the areas where we're going wrong as a society. Noah, famous character from the Bible, right? Everybody knows. Depending on the translation of the Bible that you're reading through, and they're all a little bit different, so the wording is a little bit different, but here's in essence what it says. When it introduces Noah, and remember, Noah was the one that God chose to save in the flood.
Yep.
Okay? It says that Noah was a good man in his time. Meaning if you judge him against the people that he's grouped with, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Okay? I point that out because you have to take a historical context to everything that's going on at any given time. Okay? You pull some of these people forward in time, and they wouldn't be good dudes in our time. But back in their time...
Most of them probably wouldn't be.
No. But back in their time, they were all right.
Because the social norms changed so drastically.
Exactly. But that's the case with not a lot, virtually all of the founding fathers of the United States. By today's standards, they wouldn't look really good.
Yeah.
But by the standards of that time, these dudes were pioneers. Did they do some things that we look at today and go morally reprehensible? Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
And 100 years from now, they're going to look back on us and say the same thing because things change. We also might, if we could, look into the future and say what they're doing then is morally reprehensible.
And
right?
It probably is.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to judge it in the time. I point this out, again, because the majority of this material, the setup for it is old stuff, okay? I'm looking through right now a timeline where they talk about the legacy of white affirmative action. And it says the following is a sampling of dates related to significant happenings, laws, court decisions, policies, and other acts that have contributed to institutionalization of racism. Okay? And it starts at 1607 with the settlement of Jamestown. Jamestown being the first permanent English colony. And it goes forward and it highlights some fun things like the Declaration of Independence. Somehow that contributed to racism. Some other fun things. The 13th Amendment, which slavery was abolished for all people except those convicted of a crime. Now, I can understand maybe your problem with convicted of a crime, but are we really going to say that an amendment that abolished slavery somehow added to racism?
I don't know if it made the problem worse. I don't know if it fixed the entire problem, of course. But I think you could at least say that it was a small step in the right direction.
Exactly. But again, judge it in its time.
Yeah.
As you have to judge things in the time too, because you're working to get out of whatever it is that you're in at that particular time. If you are a revolutionary, if you're trying to make change, so you don't just flip a switch one day and say fixed.
Yeah, big change doesn't happen quickly. It's
No.
that whole turning the Titanic thing.
Nope. 1935, the Social Security Act, retirement, racist. Let's go for some more recent ones. 1978. These are things that we can wrap our brain around a little better because they're more in our time. Okay, 1978, Proposition 13. Prop 13 was a California proposition. And if you have any clue as to what was happening in the 70s, it's real similar to what's happening right now, runaway inflation. It was worse then. I pray we don't get to that level. But in California, what was happening is it was taking property taxes and it was driving them so high that low-income, elderly people, people like that, were actually being driven out of their homes because they couldn't afford the property taxes anymore. So Prop 13 was developed, Prop 13 was passed, and it rewrote how it was that property tax was calculated. And it was actually capped at 1% of the full cash value of a property, and it was backdated to property values from before the inflation crisis started. So a good win for people, especially lower income people, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be a thing. Well, this material calls out that as, again, another racist thing. And it says that the tax structure greatly benefited white homeowners. And because it bestowed its benefits on the rich and powerful, it's now considered untouchable by California politicians. So they're arguing that this thing that was meant to help people stay in their homes who couldn't afford to pay the taxes is benefiting white people. And because of that, California politicians, who last time I checked were about as left as they get, they're all racist because they won't touch it. That's the argument there.
I wonder at the time, my only thought, and I'm not necessarily saying this to defend either side of the argument, but I wonder what the percentage of homes were that were owned by white people versus black people, and I wonder if that's why they're pushing the statistic the way they are.
Well, I think you got to look at a bigger picture if you're going to delve into that and say, well, what percentage of the population was white versus minority? White versus black, white versus Latino, white versus whatever, and how did they line up? If it was 75% white, well, if they own 75% of the homes, okay, that makes sense. There's more of them, they're going to have more homes or whatever the case would be. So maybe, but we need more data. Yeah. Right? Okay.
But that also doesn't mean that it didn't help lower income people of color.
Exactly.
Obviously, there's a lot of Hispanic in California as well.
Yes, there is. Okay, so another more recent thing in their timeline of racism. 1990, Congress passes comprehensive new immigration law, which includes employer sanctions for knowingly hiring a worker without papers, discouraging employers from taking job applications for Asian Americans or Latinos. Okay, so time out. This coincides perfectly with a couple of decades that I spent in corporate America. All right. And what they're talking about there was for you to legally hire somebody, all you had to do was confirm that they are indeed a citizen of the United States or they have the proper paperwork to work in the United States.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Now, you worked with me for a great period of time. Yep. In your opinion, and I want you to be honest for the dear listeners, was I at all scared to hire people who were not white?
No.
No. Actually had a lot of not white people working for us.
Yeah.
Did I care? No. The only thing I cared about was could I hire them legally? But I had to put a white applicant through the same process.
There was black, there was one person I can think of that was at least part Asian, which is not common in where we were as part of the population.
Filipino.
Yeah.
Times 2, I think.
Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
Arab.
Yep.
Honestly, there were a couple of people who worked in the warehouse. I'm not really sure what their what their background was.
Bottom line is melting pot.
Yeah.
And everybody had to go through the same thing. So you can claim that that thing is a problem, that you have to check the paperwork. But I didn't shy away from somebody who wasn't white because I was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to have them hired legally. I looked for the best people for the job.
We also had 16-year-olds working alongside 65-year-olds, too. I mean, our spread of ages in that store, there was a lot of diversity.
Yep, and me, the dude who was kind of in the middle of the pack age-wise, was known as Dad.
Yep.
So figure that one out. But no, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. Why is that racist? One more from their racist timeline. 2009, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. What president was responsible for that?
What year again?
2009.
That would be Obama.
Yeah. Our first
Black president. Yeah.
$840 billion for schools, municipalities, infrastructure development, energy, etc. Another race-neutral act that has disproportionately benefited white people. That's what the thing says. Okay. But if we look at where the money went for the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, because, you know, the interwebs are wonderful, just reading at random where some of the money went. 86.8 billion went into Medicaid. That generally benefits lower income and people of color.
Yep.
Historically, they're the biggest takers of said programs, right? 2.1 billion for Head Start, 2 billion for child care. That tends to also go more towards those communities. 19.9 billion for food stamps, 3.2 billion for temporary welfare payments and WIC, 150 million to refill the food banks. Goes on and on, but there's just a few examples right there of where billions of dollars went into what one would easily argue are historically more minority benefiting programs.
Yeah.
But again, this material calls it out
As racist.
as racist. And I'm calling out the material because, again, if we're looking at this from it's taking a workplace and dividing it, all right, we're already making some sketchy arguments for the basis of why there's this culture that has been built up where the white man is just inherently racist. It's built into them. I don't know. So this was called out a little bit in the article as well, but I want to run through it because they talk about the characteristics of white culture. Now, there's some of these that I would really like to know how they would be a problem for a business like Walmart. Perfectionism. Wouldn't that be something that any sensible business would want to achieve?
I would hope so.
Because with a certain level of perfectionism comes things like efficiency, less waste.
Well-managed displays.
Well-managed displays, cleanliness.
From a manager's point of view, keeping your overtime in check, making sure that all breaks are covered and there aren't gaps in your registers, and et cetera, et cetera.
Generally things that would improve a customer experience. Involve a little bit of perfectionism.
Making sure you're not missing money when it comes to deposits, so that the people above you aren't harping on you every night.
Yeah. Okay, here's another one. Sense of urgency. That's pretty critical in most businesses. It's most certainly critical in what we do. If we're not urgent about taking care of our orders from our customers,
they get upset.
They get cranky.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
Well, they should, yeah. I mean, and some of that obviously for us is setting expectations because so much of what we do is made to order, but still, you know, we have to have an urgency to fulfill the order in the time that we promise.
I get cranky if I order something online and it doesn't come when it's supposed to. I think everybody does.
And she gets cranky with me. So if Beth orders from you, please fill the order. No, but you know, that's a good thing for a company, but they're deciding that it's racist. What else in the list here? Oh, browser froze. Unfreeze, Mr. Browser. Okay. Worship of the written word. Now, this as they explain it, we're not talking about the Holy Bible here. We're talking about things like memos, checklists, documentation, and then also the ability to have strong writing skills to be able to communicate. Isn't that important for a business? Any business?
Yeah.
Try running, especially what we do. All of our business is online, okay? Try running a business if you can't write a coherent email to somebody. Your online business will not work. Try doing a podcast if you can't speak clearly. I'm not saying that...
I was going to say there's times, but...
Well, everybody trips over their words a little bit, but you get what I'm saying,
yeah,
though.
Yeah.
I mean, I am no pro here, and that's by design. We even said we want to be like a semi-professional podcast because there's no fun in being perfect on these things. But I still have to be able to communicate my thoughts.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't see the problem. I don't see why that would be a bad thing for a company, but yet here it is on the list of racist things. Only one right way. You could argue that in some cases, for sure, there might be more than one right way. But I will tell you that in a lot of cases, especially when you have a corporate methodology and culture that you're trying to establish across, a company that's 1,000 stores, well, there has to be some consistency in how things are done.
Yeah, and I guarantee you a store the size of Walmart with as much company overreach as it has, that they get lists of what all of their displays are supposed to look like, and they are told exactly where each product is supposed to go and on which shelf and in which 8 peg hooks over on the 4th row, whatever. Like, it's completely laid out for them. So if you're not slightly perfectionist or following the quote one way, the one way that the company is telling you to follow, then you're going to get written up for it.
These CRT trainers would really have a problem with Target. I used to work for Target back in the day, which was a Wednesday. Fun fact. They are ridiculous perfectionists when it comes to store layout. At their corporate offices, they know exactly how every store looks down to the inch. And if they give you a planogram and they say, put this peg hook 4 holes over and 2 holes down, it works every time. Now, maybe that's changed over the years, but back when I was there, yeah, that was a level of perfectionism, so they'd really have a problem with them. Paternalism. So the idea that somebody should be in charge. Now, I think a business needs that.
Yeah. Otherwise, who do you report to? It's just anarchy.
It's the old saying that a ship can only have one captain.
Yeah.
Now, you can certainly argue that you can have a captain who oversees certain parts of the business, and that's okay. But still, somebody's got to be in charge. That actually happened, by the way. Fun fact, back in the early days on the Mississippi, when they were sailing boats down, they would actually have specialized captains that would take the boat through certain segments before handing off to another one. Because the river was so large and it would always be changing just through its natural flow, that the person would become an expert on their part of the river.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That makes sense, though.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
We always like to share new things here.
Yeah.
But it's true. That's how that would happen. So you could argue that you have specialty people to oversee a certain segment of the business, but they're the captain of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And there has to be somebody in charge. Binary, either or thinking. Now this one again, admittedly, could go either way, but there are certain things that are binary. That display is right or it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're on time or you're not.
Your till is balanced or it's not.
Yeah.
That customer's happy or they're not. There are certain things that are binary, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
They're keying in the items properly that are coming through.
Exactly. Okay. Those are pretty much the highlights of the list. There's many more things that they pointed out that were quote-unquote racist, but I don't know that we need to dig into all of them. But those were ones that stood out to me because they're on the list, and the corporate training is trying to say these are a problem, but those are things they need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, have you ever been into a Walmart bathroom? They need somebody to come in and say, this isn't quite clean the way it's supposed to be.
yeah, that falls under several of those things.
Yeah.
The leadership one,
The
the binary
perfectionist.
one, the perfectionist.
Yeah.
So that's no good. Okay, so away from the material now, continue with the discussion for just a few more minutes. We've got a company, and they're not the only ones, but again, we've got to focus on something, so we'll focus on them, that is putting at least their management. I've read that they're recommending it for hourly employees, but it's not required. But if you are of a salaried position, you have to take this thing. So they're trying to say that you've got to go take this, and we're going to teach you how white man is inherently racist. And if you go through this material, we could do a day-long podcast on going through all this material. We're not going to go there. But feel free to look it up. It's not hard to find, and again, I may put links in the description. They're very clear on the concept that if you are white, you are born, you inherit this racist within you that you have to somehow excise. It's like a wart on you that you need to get out of an X-Acto knife and lance it off or something. So they're taking a large percentage of their workforce and destroying them. They're destroying their own sense of worth in favor of, and somehow this is supposed to make the other group feel better.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, these are the rules of the workplace, these are our expectations for how we treat each other, break it and you go bye-bye.
Yeah.
That seems like the better way to handle it to me. I would hope, so many of these larger corporations, I don't know if they're going to be rescued from this without something really bad happening to them. Like there's this massive walkout, or people stop frequenting their establishments, or their stock prices suddenly tank because people have had enough, or civil suits. Something's going to have to go down. But for the small business, I will beg and implore you to not go down this path that we have described today that Walmart has chosen to go down. It is not worth it to you. It will destroy you. Just make simple rules for your place.
Treat people like people.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to be misremembering how I used to run things. But again, I ran a lot of different businesses, but you were with me for several years of one of them. Do you remember any time where my rules weren't just kind of that simple? Let's just all be nice to people and do our job, and if you don't do your job, you and I will have a talk.
Yeah, the only exceptions were when edicts came down from corporate that you had no control over.
And I usually tried to do my best to ignore those if I could.
Yeah.
And sometimes I got away with it, and sometimes I didn't. But we overcomplicate everything. But this is a really bad thing to overcomplicate.
Yeah.
To take the social aspect of a human being, their ability to relate to others, to take that and try to mold it and turn it around into something is just not your job as a company. It's not. No. You take people's money. That's it.
Yep.
This is not the best way to get that done.
No.
Again, and I'm hopeful that through this conversation that we've had and people realize now, maybe if they didn't before, what's going on at Walmart, it doesn't make any sense. Please don't bring it into your workforce. It will destroy you sooner or later, because it's going to destroy this whole society.
Yeah.
Because all we're doing is we're just dividing up again. The only thing that's different from before is we're dividing in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
But it's still division, and it will still be the death of us if we don't get it together. So everybody, in my opinion, has got to do their part to just say no to this stuff. And it's a cancer. And it breaks my heart that so many corporations, businesses, Walmart was American.
Yeah.
There was a time when you walked into Walmart, excuse me, and they had Made in America signs everywhere. It was that, again, it was America. I don't know a better way to describe it. Now it's a bunch of cheap China stuff and critical race theory.
Yeah.
That don't work. I think I have successfully beat the horse to death. It is bloody. I think it's out of breath. I think it's fully dead now.
Yeah.
But I hope some people maybe had their eyes open to a little bit of the lunacy, and maybe they won't make the same mistakes, or maybe they'll stand up against it. Or maybe they'll tell me I'm wrong. And that's fine too. I'm open to debate as long as we're respectful.
Yeah.
Email me, questions@soulwisdom.com. We'll talk about it on air. Just don't make me redact your email because it had 1,000 swear words or something.
Yeah.
That is all I ask. Any final thoughts from you, producer wife?
No, you've covered a lot.
I have. We still have to work on your final thoughts thing, though. You never seem to have any. I don't feel like I'm that comprehensive.
No, but I squeeze things in when I have them.
Okay, fair enough. I love you.
I love you too.
Yay! She loves me. Visit us online at soulwisdom.com. Again, you can email us questions at soulwisdom. You can tweet us at soulwisdom. All those fun things. Like, subscribe, share, do all these things if you would be so kind. If you are on the podcast side, please consider leaving a review if your podcast platform allows for it. Not all of them do. But again, we're on a mission to get this program in front of more and more people. We feel like we've got good things to say. We feel like we're okay at it. We're having fun, and we hope that comes through in the podcast. We feel like it does. If we're wrong, you may email us and tell us, and we'll fix it.
Yeah.
But again, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. It has been a pleasure. Go enjoy some football because it is Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you tomorrow, which is a Monday, on the regular show, where we'll banter a little more funly and fancily.
Yeah.
That is all. You folks take care. Bye.
Bye.